Goodness knows you've been looking long enough. With the Volvo XC90, you've finally found what you've been looking for. A luxury SUV with seating for up to 7 people and loads of cargo space. Not to mention premium technology, including Google Maps, Google Assistant and Google Play. The Volvo XC90 is what you're looking for. Now at special run-out pricing from $99,990 plus on-roads. Visit Volvo Cars and discover why the XC90 is the vehicle for right now.
You're listening to the Weekend Sport Podcast with Jason Pine from News Talk ZB.
Zoe Hobbs is New Zealand's fastest female sprinter of all time. Last year, she became the first New Zealand female sprinter to compete at the Olympic Games since 1976 and the first Kiwi sprinter to reach the semi-finals at the Olympics in a century.
She got away nicely, Zoe Hobbs in the middle of the field and leads through 20 metres. Julian Alfred down here in lane 9. Zoe Hobbs leads through 80 metres. She's going to be second. She's going to go through to the semis. Zoe Hobbs, 11.08.
Zoe Hobbs is with us on Weekend Sport ahead of her appearance at the International Track Meet in Christchurch this weekend. Zoe, thanks for joining us. Let's start last year with the chance to reflect a little bit. What were the main things that you took away from your appearance at the Paris Olympics last year?
Yeah, I mean, I turned up in one of the best shapes I've ever been in, and I'm really happy with how I managed to execute the heat. It was one of the best when normalised times that I'd run in my lifetime. So, yeah, I was close to my best, and I ran that heat really relaxed and feeling good going into the semi. One of my biggest reflections from the games was just how I executed the semi. I didn't move off the line, and as we know with the short sprints, you can't make any room for error because there's no room to make it back up. So that was one of the biggest things I took away from the games, just managing to compose myself under that pressure. And one of the learnings from the games as well was just how much noise goes on in the stadium. I wasn't quite used to that in the past. Like, I've never experienced that from Diamond Leagues or from a World Champs in the past. So now, having gained that experience, I know that that's something to expect and something that I can practice going into future campaigns. There was a lot of positives to take away, but yeah, obviously a little bit disappointed with how I executed that semi-final. Obviously, the goal was to make the final.
Well, you ran the heat in 11.08. We just listened to it, and that would have got you close to the final if you'd run 11.08 in the semi-final. Was it a bit gutting that you couldn't back up your excellent performance in the heat in the semi-final?
Yeah, for sure. And I knew as soon, sometimes you'll finish a race and not quite know what went wrong. I knew as soon as I finished that I just messed the race up, and it was right from the start. My reaction was terrible. Usually the best part of my race is the first 10, 20 metres. And from the first step, I was already behind. So I knew that I'd messed up that part of the race. And the disappointing thing was I was in the best shape I'd been in a long time. And yeah, having run the heat in 11.08 into a headwind when normalised one of the best times I'd produced, I felt relaxed, and run in 11.08 relaxed, it was all boding well going into that semi-final. It's just, how I managed to pull the trigger, and it didn't quite come together. But that's sport.
Indeed it is. We spoke about 18 months ago, I think it was, and you talked about one of your work-ons being not tensing up so much in the last 30 metres of your races. Is that something you've got better at?
I think with experience, the more races that I immerse myself into during the season, the more I can practice that. So if we take the last month, for example, having run a few races now, even 2 indoors internationally, in a 60, it's the start is amplified. If you don't get the reaction right or the first 10, 20 metres, then you're trying to crawl it back for 50 more metres, which is a blink of a couple of seconds. The more I immerse myself in races, the more I can practice composing myself. I sort of just need to get those first races out of my system and line up next to pressure and really feel, feel the pressure next to me and just let it be. The more I immerse myself in races, the more I can practice just running in my own lane and blocking out the noise next to me. And that's one of the reflections that I had from last year is I didn't actually race as much in 2024 in the lead up to the games as what I did in 2023. So just taking from that learning, and I think something that we want to apply for 2025 is immersing myself in more races and getting more race experience to really practice not tensing up in the later half of the race.
Just want to ask you more about where you're placing your focus to make those improvements in a moment. But as far as breaking 11 seconds is concerned, you're the first Kiwi woman ever to do it, over 100 metres. You've done it a few times now. Is breaking that 11-second barrier something which is now a little bit addictive for you?
Oh, I always want to be better, and I think, I'd love to get back to that place of breaking 11 seconds again. That's the sort of mark that you're looking at if you want to make a World Champ final or even an Olympic final. It's not what we saw this year, but generally that's around the mark that you have to be to make that, the world sort of level final. So I'd love to be at a point where I can consistently break 11 seconds, not just doing it once or twice a year. I'd love to be consistently breaking that barrier. So, yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk about how you do that more regularly. And you alluded to it slightly before, blocking out some of the noise in the stadium, staying in your lane, that sort of thing. Where are you placing your focus specifically as you look to run sub-11 or close to it more regularly?
Yeah, so I'm working with a great team. I actually made a team change at the end of 2023. There's a lot of physical biomechanical changes that we've made over the last 12 months. I used to run with this is getting really technical, but a right wall collapse. So I was leaking a lot of energy in how I was running. So we've cleaned a bit of that up, changing some of my, trying to get like more terminal extension. So if we think about it simply, it's like trying to get more hip height so that I'm striking the ground higher and able to get more out of my stride. I've worked with a new team to try and create these changes. It's just not something that's going to happen overnight, and we're slowly chipping away and trying to make it natural in some of the like tempo stuff that we're doing in training. But when it comes to racing, you can't think about technical changes. You've just got to let it go. So we're hoping that it over time bleeds into some of my races, but we have seen a big physical change in how I'm starting to race compared to where I was 12 months ago. So hopefully that just continually changes over time.
Man, there is, you talk about it being technical there. It's obviously so technical, and just these little changes in the way that you run. So are you watching a lot of footage with your team to identify some things which you might want to change, and then working on making those things happen subconsciously without even thinking about it?
Yeah, so it's all the stuff that we're working and training. It's easier to work on the technical changes in things like the gym or tempo running, so not at that maximal pace. But then when we go to do faster stuff like, for example, flying 30s, or even when it comes time to being in an actual race, you can't afford to think about how you're going to technically run, because as soon as you think when you're running, then you're just going to be running slow because you're spending too much time thinking. So the idea is when we're doing stuff in the gym, we're trying to bring in new exercises and biomechanics and things to try and fix up some of my flaws, I guess. And like the tempo running, having time to think about how to change the mechanics so that over time it just bleeds into my actual fast running.
All right, well, let's look ahead to 2025 and what it might hold for you. You recently, in the last couple of weeks, qualified for the World Indoor Champs in the 60 metres, so you've got that locked in at the back end of March. The New Zealand National Champs are a couple of weeks before that. What are the other key events, Zoe, you're targeting in 2025?
Short term, this weekend I'm racing at ITM in Christchurch, and that's, as you say, 2 weeks before the National Championships, and then World Indoors mid to late March. And then looking beyond that, my outdoor international campaign will start, I'm hoping, around May. I'm looking to target the Doha Diamond League again. I went there 2 years ago and it was a meet that I loved. The season is looking quite different to how it has in the past. So World Athletics have now structured the World Championships to be the last race on the calendar, to make that like the final pit stop. So it's going to be quite a long season of racing. I think I'm going to split up my season. Still got to work through finalising a plan, but I think I'm going to do Europe twice. So going over from May to July-ish, coming home for a bit of a block, because there's a window of about 2 to 3 weeks where there's nothing on in Europe for me to compete in. That's usually when they do the European and American nationals window, get a reset by coming back with my team, and then go back in August for some more competitions ahead of the World Championships in September.
Is the next Olympics in 2028 already on your radar?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we look 4 years ahead. And obviously being in the sport of athletics, the Olympics is one of the pinnacles for us. Obviously a World Champs has got the same people, and it's still a focus short term, but yeah, the Olympics for us in athletics is the pinnacle. As I mentioned before, we're trying to work on a lot of technical changes, so hopefully in another 4 years' time I will have become more tuned to some of those changes, and I think it's all about building towards the next 4 years.
All right, good to know that you're going around again. I heard you say in an interview, I think it was before the last Olympics, that growing up you wondered if your dream of going to the Olympic Games was one that was too big. But clearly it wasn't, because you made it to Paris in 2024. So having been to one Olympic Games, do you now have an even deeper desire to go to another one and do even better once you're there?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Like, I think as I've grown throughout the sport, my goals have also changed. Once upon a time, as you'd alluded to, like, to go to the Olympics seemed like a bold dream. And for a long time, it was even chatted amongst circles that the only way you could make a major as a sprinter in New Zealand would be through relay and not individually. And as I've chipped away and got closer and closer to qualifying times, I saw it as more of an opportunity. And now that I'm at the level I'm at, my goals have changed. I don't just want to be there to be a competitor. I don't want to just be there to be just representing New Zealand and be a person in a race. I actually want to make the final and go even further with it. So yeah, for sure, LA is definitely a goal.
Fantastic. Well, we can't wait to see what plays out for you over the next 3 years as you head towards Los Angeles. Zoe, thanks so much for being so generous with your time, having a chat to us. All the best in Christchurch this weekend and then on towards the events that lie ahead. Really appreciate you taking the time for a chat.
Oh, thank you.
No, thank you, Zoe. Zoe Hobbs there. Some pretty specific answers there about finding improvements, but I guess that's the nature of top level sport, isn't it? You seek any way of making an improvement, and in track and field, the likes of 100 metres, where every split second is so important, you'd do whatever you could, wouldn't you, to try and find those improvements? Yeah, just can't wait to see if Zoe Hobbs over the next 3.5 years can make a charge towards Los Angeles, get back to the Olympics, and who knows, maybe even make the final. And once you're there, who knows?
For more from Weekend Sport with Jason Pine, listen live to News Talk ZB weekends from midday, or follow the podcast on iHeartRadio.
For a few years in the 1970s, the Mr. Asia Syndicate made millions.
Heroin creates its own market. It acts like a form of plague.
Until jealousy, betrayal, and murder brought it all crashing down.
Then he just pulled out a gun, shot her in the back of the head, and then said to Wayne, "You're going to help me bury her."
This is Mr. Asia, A Forgotten History. First 3 episodes available now on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts.